All right, this is going to be the video for the triangles lab. So there's going to be a file on Canvas. It's a part file named trianglesketches.prt. This is the file that you need to download and open up. You're going to do your drawings in this file, and then this is what you're going to be taking a screenshot of and submitting to the Dropbox on Canvas. So let's go over this real quick. There are 6 coordinate systems, datum coordinate systems, already in that file. They are labeled triangle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So as you draw your triangles, they're going to coordinate with these coordinate systems. So triangle 1 is going to be drawn on the datum coordinate system labeled triangle 1. And triangle 2 will be on the datum coordinate system labeled triangle 2. So on and so forth for those. Triangle 1 has already been drawn as an example. So you will have to draw triangles 2 through 6. These need to be on different sketches. So I've got an example here of how your part navigator should look after you have completed the lab. One thing to note is that these sketches need to be fully defined. And to fully define these sketches, we're going to be doing we're going to be using a lot of things to start off with that are really critical to creating fully defined sketches. We're going to be dealing with how we place our lines, our snap points, deal with our auto constraints, make sure that we are defining the lines, the curves, how we want. And along with that, we're also going to be dealing with relations or persistent relations, where we actually get to say, I want this line to be horizontal or parallel to the x-axis. So we get to control the size, the shape, without actually giving a dimension. We're kind of constraining it the way that we want to using these relations. So that's what we're going to be doing. This is how your screen should look when it's done, okay? So this is not exactly the screenshot that what I want. We'll go over that, but this is how the triangles should be laid out. So let's go ahead and start in on triangle 2 here. I've got our file open. Notice that you might have to expand the name column to be able to see the triangle 1, 2, the triangle names. So the easiest way to do this is to click on the datum coordinate system that you want to sketch on. So notice that the second one is highlighted. See how they highlight as we go. So we can just click on them here. But I find it easiest to click on them in the part navigator. So since we're doing triangle 2, I'm going to click on the datum coordinate system labeled triangle 2. And then I'll come up here to create a sketch. What that'll do is that's going to go ahead and place our sketch origin at the origin of that datum coordinate system. Notice that it's grayed out, and even we have our sketch origin where that datum coordinate system was. So in the sketch, what I'll do is I'll go to the profile. This will allow us to make 3 consecutive lines. It's important that our first point of our line starts at the origin. Notice that this point here is starting at this origin. And we're going to come down. This bottom line is parallel to the x-axis. That we're going to use a relation to do that. Now we could set it up so that we do this through an auto constraint. Or we could draw the line not parallel to the x-axis and add a relation. That's the way that I'm going to do it, but I'll show you how it'll look if we do the auto constraint. So when we place this first line, this first point, notice that I can place this point pretty much anywhere on the curve. So this could make it kind of difficult to put it on the origin. There's a couple of things that we could do. So we could see, I'm going to move my cursor around, but I'm going to stop close to the origin. And I'm going to wait there for a second. You see those 3 dots that appear? If I now click, we have this box that pops up. And I can be very specific with what I actually want to select. So we've got our existing point sketch origin. That's what we want. That's what we're looking for. The other thing that we could do is I could come over here to my snap options. And these are where those snap points pop up. So the ones that I turned off are not going to snap to those points. So the reason that it was that we had that snap point pop up along our lines was because we have point on a curve turned on. If I were to turn that off and then go back to place my point, notice that my snap point's not popping up at all until I go to the origin. So now the only thing that I can select is going to be that origin. You can notice that those 3 dots are not even popping up for me anymore because there's no other option for me. I can only snap to the origin. So either way works. So we can do it that way, or we can come back here, wait for the 3 points to pop up, click, and we can do existing point sketch origin. That's going to place our first point. Now I'm going to draw the lines of this triangle. And we don't really care about length right now or the size. We just want to get a rough sketch of this triangle. So we had a line that was coming down, and then this would be the line for the parallel to the x-axis. So notice that as I approach being horizontal, this sort of like dotted line pops up. That is essentially indicating that there's going to be a constraint automatically put on this line for it to be horizontal. That would be an auto constraint. We can add that in right now, but I'm going to make this to where it's not horizontal. And then I'm going to come back up. And again, we want to make sure that we are snapping to that origin. So it will allow me to just click right there and put it on this horizontal line, but that's not what we want. So we want this to be at the origin. So again, I'll wait for this the 3 dots to appear, click, and then sketch origin. And then, so now I'm done with my profile tool. So I can come up here and click on the X to close this out, or I can click on my mouse wheel. Notice that line goes away. So if I can't continue this, but the profile tool is still opened up. So I can hit X now, or I can just hit the mouse wheel again to exit out of the profile tool. The profile tool is very helpful. We'll use that a lot during the semester. So now we can go in and add dimensions to this. So the way we'll do that is just by clicking on the line that we want to add a dimension to. So let's do this 3.837 line. So I'll click on this line, left click, and you'll see these 3 dimensions pop up. So we have for the X, the Y, and then we have the actual length of the line. Be careful what you actually select to add the dimension. So we don't want this dimension here. This is just the linear from the top point to the bottom point along this this y-axis, right? Same thing here. We have this point here to this point here along the x-axis. We don't want either of these. What we want is actually to define the length of the line, which is going to be this one here. So notice these are all green. So these are just options for us to click from or to select from. So I'm going to select this dimension here. So I'm just going to click on it. And then now I can actually edit this. I can actually put in a dimension. So now if I put in 3.837 and hit enter, it's going to tell me that, hey, you're adding a dimension for the first time in the sketch. Do you want to scale everything? This is really helpful because let's say we drew this like 30 inches for some weird reason, and we need to scale. We need to actually define this line to 3.837. If we did not scale the rest of it down, then that 3-inch line is going to be really small compared to these other 2 lines, which would also be like 30 something odd inches. Okay, so we're typically going to say yes here, because it'll scale down the rest of these as well. Just makes it a lot easier to work with. So now let's look at this line here. So this is supposed to be 2 things, 4 inches long, but also parallel to the x-axis. So that means that we need to add a constraint to this, or a relation. We have a ton of these constraints that we can use, or these relations that we can use that are up here. We'll use these throughout the semester. It's a good idea to get used to them and what they do. There is a page on Canvas that goes over all of these and kind of briefly describes how we would use them. So what we want is this line to be parallel to our x-axis. There are a couple of ways that we can do that. We can use our make parallel constraint. We can say I want to make this line parallel to this line. So I could click on this line and then this line, my x-axis, horizontal axis, and those would be parallel. I can also do the make horizontal, which would just make this line horizontal. That's what I'll use. Before we do that though, we need to make sure that we have what's called persistent relations turned on. By default, this is off. If it's off and we add a constraint, it's not going to be essentially remembered. So we want to turn on persistent relations. So we can go to the options and then create persistent relations. I want to make sure that's turned on. If you're not sure if it's on or not, a couple of ways that we can check that. Notice that it's not highlighted here. So you can hopefully see that it's just that white background. If I click on it now, you see how it's like blue? So that means that it's turned on. The other way that you can kind of quickly check and see is notice the relations that we have available to us. If it's off, if I turn it on, I have more relations that are available. So if you see these over here, this like squiggly line and these curves, that means persistent relations is turned on. Notice I've just got the last one is the make midpoint aligned. If I turn persistent relations on, now the last one is going to be the make uniform scale. So with my relations turned on, I'll go to make horizontal. With this one here, we just select one line, one curve that we want to be horizontal. And that's going to be in respect to the sketch origin that you have. So this is my horizontal line. So if I clicked on this line, it's going to make that line horizontal in respect to my horizontal axis. So I clicked on that line and you'll see that the line in like green is where the curve is going to be when this is applied. We can hit show results if we want to make sure. I could say that looks good. Now I can hit OK. So this is not fully defined yet because I don't have a length here, but this line is horizontal. If I click on it, you can see that we have a horizontal constraint here. So horizontal relation persistent. So I need to add the dimension, which is 4 inches. So we'll click on the line, click on the length, 4 inches, hit enter. And then what we'll need to do is add in our 6-inch length here. Notice that down here we have sketches partially defined with 3 movable curves. So right now this sketch is not fully defined, which means that these lines can move. So we're not done with this sketch. We want all of our sketches to be fully defined, which means every dimension, length, constraint has been defined by the user. So the sketch cannot move around. So we'll add in this 6-inch dimension just by clicking on the line. I want this length to be 6 inches. And now if we look at the bottom, sketch is fully defined. Also, all of our lines are black. So if I delete this 6-inch, notice that my lines are now this brown color, but once I give this dimension, the lines are going to turn black. Sketch is fully defined, so we are done with sketch 2. So what I'll do is I'll come up here to finish. I'll hit finish. Now, the last thing we need to do for triangle 2 is actually come over here to name our sketch. So to name the sketches, you can right click and go down to rename, or you can just click and then click again and you can name it that way. So we'll just name this triangle 2 and then hit enter. And now we have that sketch labeled as triangle 2. And we can move on to triangle 3. Triangle 3 still, again, has the bottom line parallel to the x-axis, so we can add a horizontal constraint there. A new thing that we have, though, is we have this degree. So before we were just clicking on one line at a time to give the length dimension. Now we're going to be giving a dimension in respect to two different lines. So that'll be something new that we go through. So let's go to triangle 3. We'll go to sketch. I'm going to use the same method that we had before. So I'll go to profile and make sure that I'm sketching on the origin. So make sure that I have existing point sketch origin selected. And I'm not going to care about size right now. I'm just going to make sure that I have a triangle. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use this auto constraint that we have here because it's going to automatically put in that horizontal constraint that we want. And then come back up to make sure that we are clicking on the origin. And I'll give the length of these lines first, and then we can go in and do our 50 degree. So both of these lines are 4 inches long. So I'll click on my left line, make sure that we have the correct length dimension. So we'll do 4 inches. Yes. Now the other thing that we could do here, since these are the same length, so this line here and this line here are the same length, I could come in and do the same thing, give this dimension. But we can use another constraint that we have. We have this make equal constraint. This is really handy for if we have multiple shapes that are all going to be the same size. We don't want to have to go in and say 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches. If we could just control one that controls all the size. If they're always going to be the same, then this can help save us a lot of time later on if we need to make a change. So I can go to my make equal constraint. We can either have an equal radius or an equal length. We want an equal length because I want to say, hey, this line and this line, they're always going to be equal. So notice here that we have a motion curve and a stationary curve. If you get these wrong, NX will just say, hey, I think you meant to do it the other way. And you'll just say, okay. So don't be too caught up on what's the motion curve? What's the stationary curve? All we're saying is that this line and this line are going to be the same length. We'll say, okay. So now let's say this was 6 inches, right? This line over here is also going to update. So we have this equal length relation on here. So that is very helpful. This is not 6 inches, this is 4 inches. Now notice that it's still partially defined because we're missing that 50 degree angle. So that angle is from this line to this line. So I'm going to click on my left line. This is the same way that we would do the length is how we did the 4 inches. But now I'm going to click on the other line. And we have this angular dimension that pops up. So I'll click on that. And this is how I give the dimension, the angular dimension of 50 degrees. And then I click off. We have the 50 degrees, 4 inches. This bottom line is horizontal to the x-axis, and our sketch is fully defined. So we'll name that sketch real quick, triangle 3, and we'll go down to triangle 4. With triangle 4, we'll go to our sketch. Now triangle 4 has 2 of these angles, so we have 35 degrees and 56 degrees. What this does is we have to be careful because this is not 90 degrees right here. So if we're not careful and we add an auto constraint, we can get ourselves into trouble. NX has sort of adjusted this a little bit. So if we did get it a 90 degree right here so if we did make this perpendicular, then when we put in the 56 degrees, it'll essentially cancel out this perpendicular relation. But we want to be careful. That's how the auto constraints, the auto relations can get us into trouble sometimes. Because if we accidentally place the line with a relation that's not supposed to be there, it can make things tricky later on. So we want to be very specific with what's being applied to our sketches. So again, I'll go to the profile, start at the origin. And I'm not going to care about the size exactly. Just going to place my lines. So notice that if I were to click right here, it's applying a vertical constraint, meaning that this line will always be vertical, but the line is not actually vertical. It's a little bit offset because of that 56 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and make this line where it's curved in a little bit. So there's no relation applied to it at all. And then I'll bring this down, make sure that we are at the sketch origin, mouse wheel click twice, and we can start to apply our dimensions here. So this line is 4 inches long. And we have I'll do the 56 degree first. So from this line to this line is 56 degrees. And then this line to this line is 35. So notice that it's applied the angle on this side. What we want is this inclusive angle. So we can just click and drag. So I'm just going to click and drag where I want the angle to be at. So now it's actually giving me this included angle here. So this is going to be 35 degrees. I'll hit enter, click off. Sketch is fully defined. So this is how it should look. So I'm going to change this, and I'm going to show you how it looks if you were to accidentally put that vertical constraint onto the line. So now we have a vertical constraint placed on this line when we don't really need one or want one. So if I were to give these dimensions again, 4 inches, and then we had 35 degrees. Now I'm going to try to do this 56. See, it's saying it's 55 degrees. And you see the constraint is turned this like pink color. So it's NX's way of saying that, hey, if you change this angle, you're going to break this constraint. So if I did 56 and hit enter, it's going to allow me to do it, but it's going to break this relation, and it's called it's relax. So if you were to click on the relation, you could relax it. So it allows you to actually kind of break that relation. So we've got this one fully defined. We're going to name it triangle 4. We'll move on to triangle 5. Triangle 5 is off of the origin, so we're not starting at the origin. We're starting sort of in this first quadrant up here. So positive X, positive Y. We're 2 inches up from the X-axis and 1.5 inches over from the Y-axis. And then this whole thing, really this line is 12 degrees off of my horizontal axis. And then we have 35 degrees, 56, 4 inches. So it's the same triangle as before, but we are off of the origin and at this 12 degree angle. So I'm still going to go to my profile tool. But when I start this, I'm not going to start it at the origin. I'm going to start it up here. And again, I don't want to add any constraints here. So notice that like on here, it's going to add a perpendicular constraint versus my vertical constraint. I don't want either one. I'm going to make sure that I don't have one added. I do want that line to meet at that point though. So now I have the triangle. Let's go ahead and give it the dimensions that we know, that we're used to. So we've got this 4 inches. We've got our 56 degrees and our 35 degrees. So last time we gave these same exact dimensions and it was fully defined. It is not fully defined now because although we have the size of the triangle fully defined, we do not have the location of the triangle fully defined. So I can move this thing around in this sort of really two-dimensional space. It's not, the location has not been defined at all. We defined it by placing it on the origin and by saying, hey, this bottom line is parallel to the horizontal axis. But that's not the case this time. What we have is this point right here is a certain distance away from the origin, really from the y-axis and the x-axis. And then this bottom line is actually 12 degrees from the x-axis. So sort of like how we did the angles where we said, hey, from this line to this line is this angle. We're gonna do the same thing, but from this point to my vertical line is that 1.5 inches, and the same thing for the horizontal line. And then we'll give the angle dimension for our 12 degrees. So I'll click on the point. We want to make sure that we're actually clicking on that start point. So to make sure that I am clicking on that point, I'm going to wait for the 3 dots to appear, and I can click on the start point, because I want to say from that point to this vertical line. When I click on those two things, I have a linear dimension that pops up, and we're told that this is 1.5 inches. Click off again, and we're going to do the same thing, but to go to our horizontal line. So I want from that start point to this horizontal line. Click on the dimension. This is 2 inches. So we're almost there. So we're getting closer, but this thing can still move. It's just going to pivot around that point. So this line is not horizontal to the x-axis. It's off of it by 12 degrees. So I can click on that line, click on my horizontal axis, and I can say this is 12 degrees. Now our sketch is fully defined. Finish. Make sure we name it. And go to our last sketch. Triangle 6. Triangle 6 is something new. It has this reference geometry. So we have this circle with a radius of 0.662. And we have the triangle where the 3 sides are tangent to the circle. That means it's making a point of contact. So we have a point of contact here, here, and here. And we're also told a couple of things about the length of this line in respect to from this point to the origin, and then from this point to the origin. The other thing is that this bottom line is going to be parallel to our x-axis. So we have a lot going on here. Let's start with our circle. We're going to do a couple of things here. We're going to change it to where we are dimensioning a radius. And also we want to convert this to reference geometry. So if we do have reference geometry in our part, we do want to make sure that we are converting that to reference geometry. Reference geometry isn't going to be actually like driving the shape. We're using it more as a dimension than anything else. So we're not going to be creating the actual geometry with this reference geometry. We're going to be using it to dimension the actual shape of our object. So I'm in my sketch, and I'm not going to go to profile first. I'm going to go to circle first. I do want the circle to be at the center. I want the center of the circle to be at the origin. So I'm going to make sure that I'm clicking on the origin. And I'm just going to click off somewhere. So this circle has not been defined as far as the diameter. If I click on the circle, our dimension pops up, but this is a diameter. Okay, so this is our diameter symbol. So if I click on this now, notice that it's saying, hey, give a diameter. We're told the radius is 0.662, not the diameter. They're two different things. If I right click on this, so let me go through that again. So I've clicked on the dimension once. I'm going to click on it again, and we can say convert to radius. Now you can see that it's got the R. So now I can double click on this and change this to our 0.662. So we want to make sure that that's in a radial dimension. So again, we clicked on it one time, and then we right clicked. So we left clicked once and then right clicked. and we said convert to radius. Now it says convert to diameter because we are dimensioning this with a radius. So we have the correct size, but I want this to be converted to reference geometry. So what we'll do is we'll click on the line, left click on the line, and this little box pops up. This box has a few things. So it's got the convert to reference. We can hide it, we can edit it, or we can just delete it. We want to convert to reference. What this does, if I click on this, notice now we've got this like dashed line, but we also have it to where we're not going to be able to do anything with this. So if I were to finish this sketch right now, that circle has disappeared. So I can't see it unless I'm actually in the sketch. So I can only use this in the sketch to drive actual geometry, which is what we're doing with this triangle. So now I'll go in and add the triangle. So go back to profile, and I'm just going to roughly sketch this out. I want this to be off of the circle. So the circle is going to be inside the triangle. So I'll just click over here. And I want to make sure that this ends back at that start point. So let's start with our tangent relations. So here we have make tangent. That's what we want. Make tangent. And I have 3 of these to do. So I'm not going to hit OK. I want to hit apply between each one. So remember, if we hit OK, it's going to do that thing. So it's going to apply that relation and then exit out of the tool that we're using. If I hit apply, it adds the relation, but the tool doesn't close. It allows us to make another relation. So I'll click on one of the lines of the triangle, and then I'm going to click on the circle. And notice that what that does is that brings this line down to a point of contact between the line and that circle. So I'll say apply, and I can go around and do the rest of these. So line, circle, apply. Line, circle. Now this is the last one I'm going to do, so I'm going to hit OK. The other relation that we need is for this bottom line to be horizontal. We could have done that while we were creating the line. I did not. So I will go to make horizontal, and I'm just going to click on that bottom line, and I'll hit OK. And then we're told some dimensions. So we're told from the origin to this endpoint, and then from the origin to this endpoint. That's what the dimensions are here. So kind of like how we did this point over here, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to do from my origin to this point. That is going to be 1.5. We could also do from this vertical line, since that goes through the origin. So I could say from this vertical line to this endpoint. And that's 0.728. Sketch is fully defined. I can hit finish. Change this name. And then we are done. So I want you to submit the part file and then also a screenshot of essentially this screen right here. So I want to see your part navigator with the names of the triangles as well as these sketches of the triangles. But that is it for this one.